Welcome back, Wargamers. Today I'm going to talk about what I use to base both my terrain and my miniatures, which is this right here, vinyl tile. Now this is a miracle basing material. It's thin, it's durable, and it's about as cheap as you can get. And I'm going to be using this for basically all my miniatures in the future. You might look at it and say, well, there's a little bit of a bend to it. Is it going to warp? You know, how tough is this stuff? Well, once you put your figure or your buildings on there and then cover it with your PVA and your sand or your plaster, whatever you use to base your miniatures with, you'll find that that flex kind of disappears and it's actually pretty rigid in the end. So here is my Frankish noble that I'm using for Saga, and how I made his base is I just got an old MDF base, traced around it with permanent marker, and cut it out with scissors. That's all you need to work with this material. You don't need any fancy power tools, no drill presses, anything like that. You just need a good old pair of scissors to cut them out, and then I use a file to kind of make sure the edges of it are round, and you get a pretty nice nice base out of it. It's not going to be perfectly round, but you know, it's not noticeable. The irregularities of it aren't noticeable once you get it all based and flocked and all that. And this stuff is super cheap. You can actually get it for around 70 cents for a sheet that will probably make you 70, maybe 80 bases. So you're looking about a penny per base. And if you're basing big buildings like that, you might spend several bucks getting a sheet of MDF to base your building on. Vinyl tile might cost you 20 cents. And you can actually get free samples at most hardware stores. What's nice about the free samples is they take away the adhesive backing to it, so it's not sticky. But if you're feeling weird about taking a bunch of free samples and you don't want to abuse your local hardware store, you can get the vinyl that you see here that has the adhesive on it, and you just take off the paper backing, and then I cover it with some PVA, and once the PVA hardens, it's not sticky anymore. So that's an easy way to deal with that. But anyways, in this video I'm just going to show how I use it and why it's so great. And if you look at the texture that often comes on these vinyl tiles, as you just saw, you can probably just use it for, you know, like desert terrain without even painting it. You just use the texture that comes on it. So I might explore that as well in the future. So I'll show you the finished product, and hopefully, if you're not impressed already by vinyl tile, you'll at least agree that it looks pretty good and is way more cost effective than anything else. So here we have my buildings, and I have my Frank warrior down there, and then a Games Workshop blood-bound warrior. So here again is the vinyl tile. I think it looks great. I think it rivals the more expensive material that you would usually use to base your buildings and your figures on. All right, and what I like about it is, if you notice, it rides so close to the ground. It blends into whatever wargaming surface you have, your mat, your I don't know, your faux fur, whatever you're using to play your war games on. It's so close to the ground. It seems like your figures and your terrain is part of your table, which is something I really like. One complaint I have with a lot of MDF or plastic bases is they rise way too far off the ground. And I'll kind of show, like, here's my Frank warrior. If I compare him to an MDF base here, you see how thick that is. For me, I don't like that look as much. I like my figures appearing to be part of the wargaming surface, wargaming table. So if you are like me and you like that aesthetic, you'll be very happy with these vinyl tiles. And recently I've decided to get into Age of Sigmar. One of my buddies, he had the Start Collecting box and he wasn't using the corn, so I said I'd buy them off him. He told me he didn't have any bases, and so when I went on the GW site to look at bases, I saw that they were $5 for 10 bases. You're talking 50 cents per base, which I am not going to pay. And even looking on eBay, all the other plastic 32mm bases from generic sites were not much cheaper. This, however, cost me a penny. All right, and I think it looks pretty good. And again, I like the aesthetic of how close it is to the table, because if you look at your typical GW base, that thing is very thick. Your guys are riding pretty high off the table. And if you are one of those poor Warhammer fantasy players who is wanting to rebase their army onto circular bases, this is going to be the cheapest option, because if you're like me, to base this Khorne Bloodbound starter set by buying new bases, it would cost me around 30 bucks, which is about how much I bought all these Khorne guys for, so I'm not going to spend that. So again, if you're going to rebase your army, do this. It'll cost you, a few bucks max to rebase all your armies, and you can use these for your much bigger hero bases. I saw for some of the bases for the absolutely massive Age of Sigmar figures, they can be $6 or $7. Again, they can be 10 or 20 cents if you're using these vinyl tiles. So anyways, give it a shot. Next time you base something, go out to the hardware store, pick a few sheets of this up. I do not think you'll be let down by the quality of your bases. So anyways, if you got anything out of this video, please do like and subscribe and leave comments below. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Go out and make some terrain and paint up some figures. Until next time.